Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Canton III, and we are continuing our coverage of the Star Wars Disney Plus series, The Acolyte, Episode 5, Night, where we said goodnight to some Jedi. But one thing you won't be able to say goodnight to is the MC University Patreon. Patreon.com/MC University Pod, where you can get our bonus content. Which, one of the things that you will be getting is, after we record this, Jake and I have a lot of things to talk about. A lot of stuff is happening all over the place, whether it's Hoops and Marvel and a lot of just stuff that we're going to talk about that you'll get behind the paywall. Also, earlier this month, we had Mission Impossible Fallout. Great pod. Listen to that. Bad Boys Ride or Die. Listen to that. We got the subscriber mailbag a little later before the month concludes. And obviously, $3 to get in, get the Discord, get all of the backloaded episodes, the Daddy's Pod, forgot to mention that.
Classic.
Father's Day.
Thank you, Cecelia.
2 hours and 50 minutes of greatness and all of those things. But yes, we are here to talk about The Acolyte. Boy, goodness gracious. Before we do that, let me introduce the panel. First, the super producer, Jake Christie. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing well. Very, very, very excited to talk about this episode.
Yes, and we had to bring in some guests for this one. Returning friend of the show, our pal dpalm is in the house. dpalm, welcome back. How you doing, sir?
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I was very late to the Acolyte party, but I'm glad to be here now.
Wonderful. And also a returning guest and returning friend of the show. Our pal, she's the lady of the Discord. She's the lady in MC University lore.
Well, that implies that there are no other women in the Discord.
There are others.
There are others. But what I mean is, like, in terms of the matriarch of the whole thing, as I have said in the past, Cecelia Stokes, welcome back. How are you?
I am so happy to be here, as always.
Yes. Okay. So, The Acolyte, Episode 5. Goodness gracious, all I gotta say is, Jake and I, for the last couple of weeks, have been having conversations about this show and wondering, where are they taking it? Where is it going? I'm not sure. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think there's a chance that they got something cooking here. The idea is ambitious, but I don't quite know what they're gonna get, where they're gonna go with this. And then we get what we saw last night, or in dpalm's case earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
Where, quite frankly, I was stunned at the direction that they took this. And it goes to show you, when you know that a show is being ambitious, sometimes you gotta let it play out. And this is the perfect example of letting it play out, as we got the reveal of the Sith Lord, Khmer, we know it's him, and the character turn, that how he looks as a Sith Lord is unbelievable. It's incredible to watch. And then on top of that, we got the lightsaber battle. We got a bunch of Jedi shish kebabbed and dead and just cooked like all over the place. Goodness gracious. All right, so I'm going to throw it to our guests first. Cecelia, firstly, what have you thought about the show thus far? And then you can lead it right into your general thoughts on this episode.
So not unlike dpalm, I started watching it on Monday. Brent and I sat down and watched all the episodes that were out by then. So it was like episodes 1 through 4. And we were super into it. Sorry, we have a guest. This is my dog, Todd. And we were super into it, very excited. What was really interesting was that I noticed that there were some things that they were doing that stylistically I wasn't expecting. So there's like several shots in the series so far, which are like horror, thriller, suspensey. So it'll be kind of like you see the shot of her, in the ship that crashed on the snow planet, moves away, comes back, and then there's like this figure behind her that we can't really see. Or there's a few like jump scares. And so Brent and I were kind of like, there's a lot of juxtapositions, obviously, narratively going on in the show with the whole twin thing and the whole good and evil and all that stuff. But then even tonally with like I know that Caleb in the Discord was like, seems like this is kind of for a younger crowd than I am. So there's like some kind of kid jokey things juxtaposed with these horror elements. And so I was really intrigued to see how they were able to bring the narrative themes into the style of the show. And so we were kind of picking up on that. And then in this episode, so I know, like, you know, episode 3, we had this flashback. Episode 4, we had kind of like it was a little slower, but still able to kind of progress. And then this episode, I think 15 minutes in, Brent, my husband, was like, so this is like Game of Thrones, because by then fucking everyone had died. Was not expecting to see Jackie go, R.I.P. And we were kind of like, well, what now? So I like that this show has kept us on our toes, and has kind of always from the beginning been like, you need to be a little more on your toes than you think you do. So I've really enjoyed it. There's a lot to say as far as the actual plot, style, and then I think like larger thematically, philosophically, it's got a lot to offer. So.
I look forward to getting into that philosophical aspect of things. dpalm, what have you thought of this series thus far, and how did this episode hit you?
I really enjoyed it. I think that removing the framework of the story from the Skywalker saga really did it a lot of favors. I think it threw some people off, kind of wading into some of the discourse on the internet. But for me, it is like you're talking to someone whose wife listens to High Republic novels in her car. Like, this is like, I think that it's very cool to see that the flaws that we see in the episodes are present here. The arrogance of the Jedi, the blind spots of the Jedi, and that this whole thing biting them, their arrogance being the root of their downfall, has happened before. I like the fact that, like, you talk about Lucas and Filoni and the way they view these things. I loved what Cecelia mentioned about the juxtaposition of the kind of the jokey elements and the horror elements. That's Star Wars. Like, that's Star Wars. Like, it's aimed at a younger audience. It's all aimed at a younger audience. The point of the stories is to give children hope. Like, that is, in result, the point of the stories. People are like, why aren't there any dismemberment mods on Jedi Survivor? I'm like, you've missed the point of the entire thing you're supposed to be enjoying. You've missed the entire point. And so I love the fact that they're able to, like Cecelia said, I hate just aping your words, but thematically and through the drama, through the action, they're able to go over that line of what is ostensibly in as a story about good versus evil. They make you ask, well, what are the Jedi? Are the Jedi good? The sentence of the Jedi don't steal children and come with us, child, in the same like bracketed sentence. I was like, that's fantastic. That's just it's chef's kiss. Like, we're not hypocrites. Here's some hypocritical shit. Like Jedi Master Cho'Bath, like refusing to accept that it could be a darker force. Them not realizing that the Sith had infiltrated the Senate until, well, Qui-Gon figured it out early, but not until Yoda, like right before it was too late. And so it's so many of these things, that these flaws, it's really a statement on bureaucracy and like the holes that we say when we think we're safe, when we think we're secure, when we think we've fixed these things. You've only created an underclass that's going to step up. And I don't know what his name is in the show. I'm not paying close enough attention because he's always going to be Jason Mendoza from Jacksonville, Florida to me.
Of course.
But it was super dope to watch that heel turn, to watch that reveal that I think a lot of us kind of felt was coming, but at the same time, it's always nice to be rewarded in that way for the audience who's paying attention. But I thought that they've done a very good job of, one, creating a compelling villain, two, allowing Jedi to be red shirts, which doesn't happen in the original trilogy because there's so few of them. It's like, we need to protect this precious resource. And here it's like, we've got some who haven't spoken yet. How about we just shish kebab them real quickly to establish some threat? And so now we've pared down the cast. We had what's his Yord, the dude who's got the Miles Morales hair from Spider-Man 2. Black people have other hair besides that, people. We do, I promise. Getting his neck broke, but after recognizing Mendoza, like after the moment of recognition, and with Saul saying, "I'll tell you everything," there's more to it. Like, the flashback we saw is not the whole thing, and I love that. I love this unraveling of this. It's like unwrapping a present. It's a Russian doll. Every week I come out, and again, not week to week for me. I'll have to wait a week now. But after every episode, I'm like, I need to digest what happens next because I'm legitimately curious. Because a lot of the Star Wars stuff, yes, it's supposed to rhyme. That's kind of the idea. But now we're dealing in a realm that we're not as familiar with, in a realm where the Sith are a rumor. The Sith, and again, you got to remember during episode 1, the Sith are a rumor as well. Like they hide in the fact that you're too strong to believe you could be weak, and it's so beautifully presented. And with, again, Duval County saying, "You saw my face, you have to die now." Like not even like I want to kill you. It's like, them's the rules. I didn't make them. You need to not believe in me for you guys to continue with what they say. If we believe it's something else, then they have to go to the Senate and they'll lose faith in the Jedi. Once you've put yourself above the people and made yourself too big to fail, you're also too big to acknowledge actual threats.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, and Jake, give me what you got so far, and we can just jump off that.
Yeah, I think that everything everyone said is accurate. I think that like the decision to kill off Yord and Jackie was really, I was surprised, honestly, and I think that like
truly,
and I think that it didn't feel like cheap, especially because they both had moments of like the things that led to their death were character moments that like Jackie, we learn her to be headstrong and to think, that she is capable of all these things, and to not in an arrogant way, but to want to be capable of all these things. No one would begrudge a Padawan for not trying to fight. Like 7 other Jedi are dead, and she's a Padawan who's 4'8", and she would not be judged if she ran away, right? But of course, it's in her character to fight, and that is what is her undoing. And Yord, it's in his character to be a rule follower, etc., etc. And then when he, tries to do the right thing, it is like it's kind of an inversion of his character arc is done because he made the decision and he ended up getting punished for it. And so I was really pleasantly surprised to see that. I think the twist of having it be Kamir. I'm also thinking of him as Jason Mendoza, but
I'm sorry. I
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's the twist of having him be the Sith Lord, I think, was incredibly smart, because the other options would be it's someone related to like the original trilogy or the prequels or whatever, and that fuck off. No, I don't. You know what I mean?
The universe feels so small.
Exactly. That is the thing that I hate so much about the undoing of Rey being nobody, is that I hate the fact that it's a galaxy far, far away and there's only 2 families that matter. I think that is the worst thing about Star Wars at this present. And so the fact that they didn't, I was afraid they're going to do that but also, like, if it's a character we haven't met before, then when he takes the mask off, it's just some guy, like, who cares? And so, like, to make it a character we know, it is a genuine twist that has genuine, like a good twist. It makes you reevaluate things you've seen before. And so, like, I think it was, I'm impressed that I didn't see it coming, and at least people I've discussed it with didn't see it coming, because in hindsight, it's like, it is kind of weird. Like, Manny Jacinto's a little too big of an actor just to be like the random assistant, right? But in hindsight,
Trinity in a minute, man. I don't tell you, dog.
I should have thought that, but the show has been compelling enough where I'm like, you know what? They're gonna have a twist up their sleeve, and they did. And yeah, man. I at some point I just want to table it because I know that I'm not the only one, because it's been the talk of at least my Twitter timeline. Man, the man has done a lot of workouts, and he looks great. It's really something. I mean,
yeah. No, I'll say this, like, just reading the fact that he did all his own stunts and all of the work for this, incredibly impressive. I think the character work, more so than anything else, is I came away so impressed with. It's 2 completely different people.
Yeah.
That we've seen in the first few episodes, and then what we get here. And this also, you give big credit to the writing, because in the way that he reads Soul and talks about the way that the reasoning why he wants to kill all these Jedi is like, yo, it doesn't have to be anything like overly complicated. It's just like, yo, I have this power, I want to use it, and I don't need you motherfuckers telling me what to do with it. That's it.
People who make the rules are going to want to enforce those rules, and with him having power makes him a threat to their rule. Like, it's one of those. If I sit here long enough, they're going to come for me. So why wouldn't I go for them?
Yeah.
Yes. And then I think establishing him as such an overwhelming threat to them by just dispatching so many, including some of the mains, as we'll discuss a little further. I think I put out the question on the Twitter feed, like, what do people think of the episode? And somebody responded, said the greatest snap since Thanos. When
Mhm.
Yord went out like such a sucker, man. I feel so bad for him. I feel so bad for him, but like he didn't even get, because he's such a, and it's so funny to the character, because as he is leading OSHA and trying to get away and stuff along those lines, he's like, you know, there's this uptightness about him. There's this, we got to do this things this rigid way, and then he goes in there thinking that something's gonna get done, and that's just like that gone. Oh my god. Oh Jesus. What a episode overall. And I think we can we can talk fight choreography, we can talk character moments, because I think, Jake, you mentioned a great thing about Jackie, and
Mhm.
the way that, yes, it's not arrogance, it's the belief that she can get this done. It is the fact that he cooked her and she came back for more, and she was ready to go. It was no fear, it was no nothing. She was ready to fight. She fought to the bitter end. And man, the fact that, and we're not even talking about the whole May and OSHA part of it, because we have the whole switcheroo at the end, which now puts into theory the stuff that we've been talking about over the last few weeks about whether OSHA will end up on the dark side of the Force. And
Is it a
dpalm, I see your
switcheroo or
hand is raised. Go ahead, sir.
is it a switcheroo or a parent trap? I used the phrase parent trap earlier.
Oh, I think
Well,
that's
I think it's not a parent trap because OSHA doesn't seem to be in on it.
Oh, she's gonna like. Okay, that's fair. That's a
Well,
fair.
she doesn't seem aware of it, is the thing. So, like, I don't think it can be a parent trap.
She's gotta wake up at some point.
No, she is, but she didn't agree to it. I think it is a switcheroo, not a parent trap. I understand what you're saying, but like, I think I'm of the belief that words have to mean things, and I think that a parent trap is a specific situation.
I'm glad I asked the question here, and I'm glad I got the semantical answer. This is good.
So let's talk about Soul, because I think one of the things that happens here is kind of how surprised that he spends a lot of time in talking with Kamir, being very surprised at the idea that this person doesn't reveal himself to his pupil, has just this completely different ideology. And he's so focused on that. And what takes him out of that is when Kamir mentions, I know what you did. And this is going to now be the crux of the rest of the series, because now Soul is the only main dude left. So now we're gonna see, storyline wise, what happened over on the witch planet, which I forget the name of right now, but what happened over there and what he was responsible for, because clearly May was not responsible for all of it. So clearly Soul had something to do with it. Cecelia, I will ask you, because I get this feeling that there is a, not necessarily like a dark side element, but just the idea of the Jedi being this very, buttoned up space cop type thing. But
Mhm.
clearly, as this series is laid out to this point, there's a lot of corruption elements to it. And what do you think possibly could be what Soul is hiding?
I don't know the degree to which that I feel comfortable like speculating, mostly because I love Soul so much that I want to believe that he has done no wrong.
Same.
That said, and I think that uh, you guys have alluded to this in some previous pods about Soul's character. What's interesting about him is that he seems to be like at his core a decent person, and thus like the Jedi Order with its rules and regulations sometimes requires like means that he has to sort of push their rules for in order to like progress what is actually good. And I my speculation about whatever his involvement is in the downfall of the witches has it's more like I think that was maybe the moment, like sort of a break for him where he probably followed through on something that he was asked to do, that he didn't really like, but felt like compelled to. And we have the whole moment when he's like, "Yeah, the Jedi took me when I was 4, and I missed my family. It was so sad, but now blah blah blah." And so I think that that's maybe foreshadowing like he felt this way at one point, and then there was a split at some point. And I do think that whatever his involvement was in the fire situation, perhaps might be why his later, like what we know of his character now, is a little more complex. Like
Yes.
he is willing to go, yes, I love my my pupils. I do think that there are times where like the lesson to be learned is not one of strict rule following. Like you guys have said with Yord, it's sort of just empty rule following, like following rules for rules' sake rather than actually believing in a better or a goodness. And I think that with Soul's character, I'm interested to see what that was. I don't know what else. He's so tender. Like I know, AC, you've talked a lot about his facial expressions. He's so tender.
Yes.
Every face is just kind of like soft and inviting and approachable, which
Extremely empathetic is
so
what I gather from him.
so empathetic. And he is the one, like, regular every episode, the second that something happens that he's not a part of, he's the one who's most in tune with something just went sideways. I don't know what, but like he is the most in tune with things. And so yeah, I am interested, and he does seem to actually genuinely want to like get it off his chest, but doesn't know how.
Yeah, no, I think with him, I think the conflict within him throughout this series is extremely fascinating to me, because this Jedi are not supposed to be emotional, and he is extremely emotional.
Yeah.
And you see it not only in the facial expressions, but in his actions, in the way that he speaks, the confusion as he talks to Kamir in this episode. Jake, like in terms of like how we see Soul's character progress to this point, where he's confronted by this this incredible darkness in this episode, an incredible foe on top of that. How did you feel like in watching him react to that? Because it was and a lot of it was kind of terror.
I think that it's the reaction of someone who's in denial about something, but like barely hanging on. Because the thing that I've been struck by, because I've railed on the Jedi this whole time and a lot of the same stuff dpalm's been saying about how they're setting themselves up to fail. And I think that if you are in a society or in a group that has strict rules and believes that if you follow these strict rules and follow a certain way, you are always going to do the right thing, then you leave yourself incapable of having a emotional structure to reckon with a mistake. Because the Jedi, by their own definition, they can't make a mistake, because if they can make a mistake, then the rules aren't perfect, and the rules are perfect. So therefore, what is Soul to do with the fact that undoubtedly whatever happened on that night with Mayanosha, he did something that he regrets, but he can't have a regret, because I guarantee you he just followed wherever the Jedi way was. And so how does he have, if you think if you are told that your way of doing something is infallible, then you can't have any self reflection, really. Of course, he's too empathetic a person to not have self reflection, which is why he has to put himself in denial mode. Like, I think that he's just on a certain way. I think he's terrified because he's like kind of been waiting this whole time for someone to force him to reckon with it, because he can't do it by himself. But like, a part of him wants to, And I think that like he doesn't, because once you open up a can of worms, you can't go back, because you can only if you're infallible, only one mistake makes you fallible. You can make 999 right decisions, but if you make one mistake, you can't, by definition, be infallible. And so I think that he can't let himself look at it. But Kamir is making him, and I think that that's why he's so terrified.
Oh man, it's seeing how his story plays out over the next few weeks is going to be a lot of fun. dpalm, do you have anything to add on Soul? Get into it if you can.
I think it's interesting that everyone's reading his empathy as like his caring, and this is a haunted man. This is a man filled with regret. The questioning of the code came from something. Like, this is not, and even when he was talking to again, I binged this, so the names are gonna be weak for me. Jackie, when he's talking to her and talking about his old apprentice, she's like, "You shouldn't be thinking about these things." He's like, "Well, here's why we can." He's lived long enough to find the loopholes in the laws and be like, "Oh no, I'm preparing for a future interaction by reminiscing on the past. I'm learning," which is a spin that even a rule follower can adjust to. And so for me, I think the real weight of what's coming next is the confession, is the "here's what I did," and he's going to say it unwittingly to someone who already wanted him dead. And I think that is between the haunted nature of Saul, how May's going to accept that, how May's going to see how Osha turned out. Does it turn with her saying, "We've got to go back there, he's got her"? Like, we don't know. And I think that level of uncertainty, because these are unfamiliar characters, because you've got the petri dish of nature versus nurture with the twins, like, you've got this opportunity to really fully flesh this out and explore it. I believe it's an 8-episode series. Is that correct? Fantastic. Yes. I was worried. I was like, is this the end? Like, that's a good feeling. When I binge something and I'm like, wait a second, there better be one next week, is the feeling you want to have on episode 5. So I want to tip my cap to them for pulling that off. For one, introducing us to concepts, ideas that are outside of what we normally would get in Star Wars. 2, making us at home with that concept and idea. 3, the Jedi are space cops, but you find me an honest cop, I'll find you a cop who didn't work there very long. And 4, they flipped it on its head. They made it all turn. And I think the turn really came, and you mentioned the horror aspects. When you walk in and see the dead Wookiee Jedi, you're like, oh no, something horrible is about to occur. And this was the realization of all that, without even getting into the twin of it all. And we can go back to the new trilogy and the Dyad and the Force and how that could be interpreted by other Force wielders, like the Witches of Dathomir. Like, we're gonna, it's a lot of it's about perspective when you talk about the Force. The Bendu, other things like that. Like, there's so many different aspects, and to say these are the Jedi's rules and they're right, they're ostensibly not right. All the stories we know are, here's how the Jedi fucked up again. And so it's like, at a certain point, physician heal thyself. Like, yes, you're a cop, but maybe, just maybe, we should be looking at who we're hiring and if we should be abducting them as children.
And the thing too is, I think beyond just the fact that they're cops, which obviously is one of the problems, but like, if they were just the enforcement of the Galactic Senate, that would be one thing. But they're not. They're really not really. I mean, you can argue cops don't answer to the public either. But point being that, like, they're also like the judge and jury. Like, they're not just the cops, and like it's like the problems they have are like beyond, like, the actual, like, it's a rot that is inherent in their position that you know, no, they shouldn't have all that power.
Body cams for Jedis. That's what I'm hearing. Let's get it done. Yes. Start the funding today.
Yes. Yes.
New Outer Rim taxes to pay for body cams on Coruscant. Make it so.
What was I going to say? That a thing that's so funny too is, I know that AC, I know you reposted this, people being like, how did all these Jedi not sense a powerful Sith? And it's like, that's what the prequels are. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, that's, I don't know. And I think that, like, it's really, I find the Jedi much more interesting when they have flaws, because there is nothing particularly narratively interesting about these special warrior space soldier cops that are always right. That is what a 7-year-old does with toys. Like, a story, it's much more interesting. Because I also don't think that the show's going to end with being like, and therefore the Sith are right. Like, no, that's stupid. And that's, you know, but I think the idea has to be that, like, I think people, when they hear about stories of good and evil, it's like if a story's going to be about good and evil, it's about one person who's good and one person who's evil. And it's like, no, bro, that's the whole, if that's what the world was, everything would be easy. But it's like, no, a lot of good people do evil things, a lot of evil people do good things, and how does that compromise one or the other? If that's not what storytelling's about, I don't know what is.
There's layers, there's shades, there's all of these different things that you can point to in this series that's a lot of fun. And I think, to your point, Jake, why would I want to watch a show where the Jedi are just dominant without having some type of uprising, which is kind of the point of what Star Wars set out to be, with Luke being who he was, being that force to come in and upset the balance of power with the dark side. Now we get to see it the other way. That this is cool. This part is cool. So seeing Kamir explain to Soul and the way that he talks to Jackie and the fact that he got this cortosis helmet that shorts out lightsabers, that's another nice little trick that we saw here. They was trying to attack him specifically, and folks' lightsabers were getting short circuited. That was awesome. That was another nice little touch that this episode did. That was really cool. So I think in terms of what this series was, like, there was initially a hesitancy for me to be like all the way bought in just based off of just some of episode choices. As we discussed last week, we basically said like the flashback kind of took a little bit away of the momentum, even though I understand why they did it to that degree. But now it's like you have a story where you really now are just pushing along this main idea, this theme, and we can go forward. And something that we could go forward with as far as the topic is concerned is the twins, May and Osha. They have a confrontation. They have a confrontation. Nice drop there. They have a confrontation, and I think that where we find them and where they end by May's cutting off her braids and presenting herself as Osha, and Osha now being left in the hands of Kamir, buddy, we got a nice little fun little storyline going for the last few episodes. So Cecelia, I will ask you, what did you think of the conversation that the twins had? Seemed like May was upset for some real good reasons. Osha now probably has something to question now that she knows that Soul is hiding something about what happened previously. There's a lot of things to juggle here. What did you think of all of what occurred?
Okay, so the twins, I loved. First of all, I just love, like, from a up, bird's eye view perspective, I love having the sort of fulcrum of this whole series be twins, because it works so well with all of what Star Wars has, like, both within itself and then also kind of culturally represented, is like good and evil, right? And then, as we've moved on, there's like complicating that and the yin and yang and figuring out like how to have that tension with good and evil, but there's still kind of always this like going one way or the other. And I think that the twins, obviously, they represent that so beautifully, because they've had so many like flip points throughout this series where it's like, okay, so Osha's the one where we like, May is not, and then it'll turn, and then it'll turn, and it'll turn. I even liked, just like as an aside, with this episode, the last couple episodes, Osha's had like the light clothes on. Her civilian clothes are white, and May's clothes are darker. So even just representing it very visibly that way, I thought has been really interesting. But what I think they are able to do specifically, their characters, is provide the commentary on power struggles that I think that the Star Wars world, at least in the shows and the films up until this point, have still struggled with, because it's always been still like even if we're trying to complicate things, and even if we're trying to like introduce a gray area, there's still like at the end of the day, a good and a bad. And obviously for narrative purposes and for like creating a general IP, that's better, to have Halloween costumes for kids at the end of the year. Like, we want to, they're going to want to know who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. But I think that with them, and especially like what the witches were able to kind of point to a few episodes back, where they were like, some people call this power the Force and consider there to be a good, like a light and dark side, whereas we just see it as like basically raw power in and of itself. And the degree to which one engages with that power has to do with like how much of themselves they're able to they put into it. And so with Kira, am I pronouncing that right? Yeah. Yeah, Kamir. With Kamir, he says, I've embraced my darkness, and that's why I'm so powerful. It's basically, instead of saying, I've embraced my darkness, that's why the darkness is why I'm powerful, it's more like I've invested more of myself, the part of myself that we have decided as a society is poor or bad or whatever. I've invested that into the Force as well. Therefore, I am more powerful. And I like that with having May kind of follow more along the line of the witches and then go into this sort of quote unquote darker or Sith territory actually sort of reveals more of the nature of the Force itself as less of a light and dark and more just like raw power, and then what you put into it and what your motivations are for it, determine on sort of like a larger, more arbitrary but social scale what is good and what is bad. And so with their the twins are able to do this because there's kind of like, there's all these big large philosophical situations, but then at the center of it is their relationship with each other. And their relationship with each other is, I love you and you wanted to leave, or I love you and you wanted something different. I love you and etc. And so they're able to kind of like on a very miniature scale and a very like microscopic scale pull out and like pick at the threads of those tensions a lot more delicately. And I think that just having that simple switch, and it's not a simple switch, but it's sort of simple, the switch of the two of them at the end, I'm really eager to see what's going to happen moving forward, because we've kind of got to the point right in the middle of the show too. And I think that there's also like a symmetry to that, where like it kind of started on, good and bad, one side and the other, and then we're right in the middle, and they've kind of like met in the middle, and I'm wondering if they're going to splinter off kind of again, because I think that would work out well, like symmetrically.
Yeah. Will they
And
reverse roles? Has been
will
my
they
question the
reverse
entire time.
roles? I think that could work. But I also think it could work for where they kind of both stay there in the middle. Like there's so much going on, and I like that they've played with that so much in this show.
So dpalm, I got a question for you. In terms of what we may see with Kamir and Osha now that Kamir doesn't know that that's Osha, I wonder if we will get a point where Osha's gonna be like, "Hey, I don't know what this dude's soul is talking about. He sold me a bill of goods that isn't true. The Jedi have sold me a bill of goods that isn't true. They discarded me. They told me I wasn't good enough, hence I left." Where do you see this part of it going? Because there's potential for, because especially with the confidence that Kamir has, there is a presence about him.
It can't start on a lie. He has to let her know immediately, I know who you are. And I'm still willing to talk. Like that's if he is snowblown by a haircut, then one, he's not as powerful as he's pretending to be, but two, she would still not believe him. It's got to be some level of actual acceptance, because that's the only way she'll buy what he's selling. Because you saw she was willing to turn her sister in again. Still, she's still, say what you will about the Jedi, that was the closest thing she ever had to a family. Like, we have the benefit of centuries later knowing what happens with the Jedi and having watched it from a distance. For her, the Jedi saved her life. And so for her to even begin to entertain, why was my sister drawn to this, there has to be a true foundation. So I think that's very interesting what you're talking about. I think that's going to be a huge plot point going forward. But when you mentioned that Kamir had said, I've embraced my darkness, what have you done with yours? There is a scene at the end of Clone Wars where there's like 3 episodes where Yoda is going to learn the secrets of living on through the Force, the same road his friend Qui-Gon Jinn had rode down, and learning how to manifest himself post-death. And at one point, he has to fight his darkness. He has to fight the thing that he had said, I thought I'd conquered it years ago. I thought, but it goes back to, and I'm going to keep mixing things here. One of the best things about Miss Marvel, the show, the comic, is the quote, "Good is not a thing you are, it's a thing you do."
Mm-hmm.
You can't walk away and say, "Oh, I beat my darkness. We're done with that chapter. On to the next thing." That's not how it works. That's not how humanity works. That's not how internal works. Like, if you look at Jedi and Sith and the entire views of the Force as a giant allegory as the war going on within yourself, it never ends. You've never conquered the Sith. It's hiding its secret. It's poisoning you in ways you can't imagine because you refuse to look at it. And so, if that's the well of power we're talking about here, that's not going to work on Osha either, because she's not after power. She's after truth. And if Kamir can sell this truth as an inadvertent pathway to power, that's the dangerous part. Because what did May say? You never could block. May's going to go to Coruscant. She's going to meet with a Jedi who will again deny Phantom Sith 100 years later, which is remarkably funny to me. But the thing about the Jedi is it can't all be bad, or the rules would shun them all away. There has to be a core of something that was poisoned by bureaucracy, poisoned by the need to grow, to enforce its rules, to institute this rigidity. But the core is still there, and she's going to see the core. And so I had been so focused on how May's effect would happen at Coruscant, I hadn't even thought about Osha and Kamir on a rock, and him being like, "I know what happened to you. I know what happened to your family. I know what happened to your sister because I've been helping raise her. What questions might you have?" And the temptation, the first temptation in the Bible is, and I'm not religious, but it's not power.
No.
It's not money. It's knowledge. And you're about to watch it play out with Kamir and Osha.
And if I can tap in here, because I think that you're really, really pointing to a very like fundamental thing with this show. And I think that you're right to be suspicious about if he's able to convince Osha of truth rather than goodness, or justice, or what have you. I think that speaks also to like the fundamental problem with the Jedi, because with the Jedi and creating all these rules, and this is sort of like, this is a larger sort of, I guess, theoretical argument to be made, but basically with the rules, what they've inadvertently done, and by the way, I'm working off of the French theorist Michel Foucault here, so I apologize for taking that on. But what they've inadvertently done is, rather than trying to preserve or conserve or create a peaceful and more harmonious society, they are responsible for the Sith. Because if you're going to have a rule, then there's the boundaries of the rule, and then there are those that are outside of it. And those that are outside of it are fundamentally like in opposition to it as the rules itself goes. And so like the Jedi, and that was what Kamir ultimately sort of is getting at. He's like, you guys would call me Sith. He's like, I don't have a name, but this is what you would call me. And so he's also pointing to like, with your rules and systems and all of that stuff, it's going to continue to create bad guys. So essentially, and I think that that's a really interesting thing that he could easily convince Osha of, because we don't know why she had to leave the Jedi, but it probably has something to do with like an inability to fully integrate or reconcile whatever tension she has. So I
wonder if what I hope happens is, I hope that when Kamir reveals that he knows it's Osha, she says, "What is it, the braids?" Sorry.
Oh wow!
Jesus Christ!
By the way, Jake, full disclosure. I have had that line on my mind the entire podcast, and I didn't know when to.
Sorry.
No, you broke it before I did. Salute to you.
The fact that you both came in with the same prepared material means you've been doing this together.
Whoa. dpalm, I come in with no prepared material at all. I first thought this when someone said like she cut off her braids, and I'm like, okay, now I got it. So But
Sure,
yeah, it was just
sure.
the entire time
No,
I'm
you
like,
beat you beat me
let me
to it. I just did not
Cecelia
find the
Alfonso.
the off ramp. So salute to you for
Yep,
getting that to that before I did.
it was right there. But dpalm, you're right. We've been doing it for too long, and we'll do it for 10 years more. AC, what do you got to say?
No, I think all of the points made are all well and astute. I think the other thing that happened in this episode that was interesting was in conjunction with what you guys were talking about was the May and Kamir dialogue now
Mm-hmm.
in this form as he's like he seems just like so disappointed in her. He's like, damn,
Yeah.
I really man, I really had hopes for you. I had hopes for you, dog, and you just messed up. So I guess maybe I'm gonna have to try your sister instead and see if that works.
Mm.
So I think the interesting part of having no conflict in what your ideology is, as opposed to what Soul is dealing with from a Jedi perspective, is the now, like to Deepalm's point, you can sell this. You can sell this as, hey, I'm coming to you full on 100% honesty. This dark side thing, listen, once you get a hold on it, once you go dark, you never go back. Let me tell you. Let me tell you, you never go back. Even though so many people have gone back over eons in Star Wars, as far as dark and light goes. But I think the great thing, like lost in all of the lightsaber fights, which were so fun, and it was action packed throughout the episode. You felt the tension all the way. What I'm glad that we were able to talk about today, and it didn't get lost, was the true element of the story of the layers of the dark side and the force in the light side as well. What those things mean, how it just isn't black and white. There is the gray. The fact that the show is choosing to explore these things is so important to establishing that this is a different Star Wars show and could still be canon to Star Wars at the same time. As you know, people online are just having so much trouble dealing with the idea that we could tell a different story. I mean, God forbid that we try and do something else different. I mean, Jesus. But it's exciting to me that they were able to bring a lot of the old elements and a lot of the things that make Star Wars so much fun, but then also still present you with the questions that you have for the remaining 3 episodes of the fact that we care about these characters, we care about Soul, we want to see what happens with him, how he deals with this. And honestly, Kamir has become such an interesting person because I want to see what the point of all of this is for him, because I feel like we just got the tip of the iceberg. This is going to continue to lay itself out, and there's more for him to say, there's more for that character to tell. So I think this episode was just like a great introduction to that, and the fact that they waited to this point shows that one thing that you can appreciate about the writing and the direction of the show is its patience, because it's easy to you could have just easily started and blown your wad like right at the start and then kind of done the filler episode somewhere else. This show, they build, and then bam, they will hit you with the right cross, and now you have to figure out, how do we deal with this right cross? How do we recover from it? And what comes next? What comes next for Soul? What comes next for Osha and May? We've lost main characters. Now the stuff that we've seen with Vernestra in the previous episodes now comes even more into focus for me as we get to these final 3 and what this may look like coming down the stretch. Jake, I'll go to you. Like, in terms of what, now that we've had this type of episode, what are you most interested in seeing going forward?
Like, what I don't want is for Kamir to have like a but did you know that Soul, you actually betrayed me too, and yada yada yada. Like, I actually don't need him to have a super specific personal thing.
That's fair.
But I want to know what radicalized him, because like, while we're talking about the Jedi being flawed, also clearly something went wrong in his life that made him, go down this path. And because he's not just like the thing I think that's so interesting about him as a character. He is not like a rage-filled, revenge-seeking person because he's able to be the dumb apothecary for so long. Like he's clearly cunning and clever, and he has much bigger designs than just like I'm mad at the Jedi and I'm going to kill a bunch of them, you know. And so like, what is his origin? Where does he come from? Because ultimately, when we're talking about all of these, you know, reasons why the Jedi create their own villains, like I would like to see an example, like the example of that, like of like what happens to turn a guy, you know, who seems like he could be perfectly normal. He's not, you know, scarred up. He didn't get burnt up on Mustafar, but he clearly wants to kill a bunch of people. And like, what leads someone to go there? And because I also just want to see, Manny Jacinto as evil Khmer more because I think it's a fascinating performance. It's obviously way out of character from what I've seen him do before.
Knocked it out of the park. Let me tell
And
you.
you know,
amazing.
and if he doesn't want to wear sleeves for the rest of the show, I think that that's fine with all of us.
I co-sign that decision.
Mm-hmm. and dpalm, how about you? What is one thing that intrigues you going forward that you want to see, or just like not necessarily like your fantasy booking the show, but just in the sense of what storyline would you like for them to flesh out even further that intrigues you the most?
I'm gonna deviate and not answer your question.
Okay.
It's less a storyline thing, more of a
Incredible.
watching the communication of these characters through other actions. When you watch how they fought, there's so much communicated. Like watching how Saul fought and moved, and how he tempered with that dark side, where he was there with an unarmed opponent. If you talk about like going back to the Obi-Wan show,
point.
you can watch how Anakin's fighting style has always been one way, and it informs who he is and how he heads into battle and everything else. And so I'm excited to see how, because they're so intentional about the fight choreography, to see how Saul's style evolves throughout this, and also to see how May's styles evolves, because she's acted like an assassin until now. Can you make an assassin a knight? Can you make a knight an assassin? Like that's a little like the physicality stuff. Like plot wise, like I tip my weird cowboy cap to the weirdest cowboy cap wearer in Dave Filoni. Like I get out of his way. I'm like,
whoa!
Hey,
he didn't write this. He didn't write this,
but he's been given the reins of the universe.
I'm a pretty anti-Filoni guy, so I don't want to give him credit. I'm not going to give him credit. Fucking cowboy hat wearer. I'm sorry.
So this is
where
so
did
you're just
this
giving
come
up
from?
Star Wars.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, you do realize that George Lucas like knighted him. Like
no,
he's
I know. I'm kidding.
Okay.
Honestly, the main thing is I looked him up and he's from like Massachusetts. I'm like, you can't be a cowboy hat guy and be from Massachusetts. What are you doing?
If you understand the Force the way this man understands the Force, you can do whatever you want. It is funny. It is weird. He's a weirdo.
I understand. I don't know. I there's something about him. Also, I also am not super high on his TV shows, but that's for a different time. Anyway, continue.
Well, there you go.
Jake just could not resist outing himself as a hater. Like it was like I haven't done anything unlikable this entire hour.
No, I know. Can I be honest with you? What it actually is I think that Leslie Headland deserves a lot of credit because she's the writer and creator of it, and so like I don't want to get. I want to make sure she gets the credit because
this was a brilliant master stroke.
I have like a list of buttons to push with you now, and I'm so excited.
Yep, exactly.
All I was saying was I'm not going to even guess on what's coming next because I wouldn't have guessed this episode would have happened. And so they've got an understanding and a grasp of what story they want to tell. Whether people felt it was unfocused at first, you're getting a panoramic future. Now we can tell you this specific story, and I'm edge of my seat. Cannot wait. I literally finished the episode right before we recorded. I was holding my son. He's now in bed. We're going to go eat dinner, and me and the wife are going to watch it because she hasn't seen it yet. So I'm really excited.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome, and it's a good twist on perspectives of everything. Which, by the way, like in terms of my question, it was more so like because of how we have viewed these characters so far. Like, I mean, I'll say for me before I throw it to Cecelia, I think Soul has just been so enthralling for me as a person, as a human being. So to see if he has done something terrible, if he has done something to affect somebody else, and that guilt that he may carry off of that, that's something that like I want to see, and it might break my little heart And I want to see where that goes. Like, that's more in line of what I'm saying. Not to press you, like, on the whole idea. I just want to make sure
I
that
didn't think.
wasn't
I
the
think that what it
case.
was. I don't want to even like. Certain people reach the. I'm out. I trust you. Tell me what you got to tell me.
Yeah.
Like, this is.
No,
like,
I feel you.
It was like halfway
you.
through X-Men '97. I was like, you know what? I don't care what you do next. Do whatever you want. You clearly know what you're doing. They've proven the fact that I can give them the keys. I can sit in the back seat. I can enjoy the ride. I don't have to be in the side seat being like, you should probably tap the brakes here. There's a corner coming up. No.
Yeah.
You know these roads. Drive me. I'm going to enjoy the ride.
I do want to issue a quick apology. Dave Filoni's from Pennsylvania. I'm still like, the thing is, I'm just out on a guy having a hat be a thing. Like, I just am not a fan of that. It's just like, what are you doing, man?
Wow.
So now you should. Okay, that was amazing.
Well, it
was the second hater break-in in the last 5 minutes.
Honestly, Deepam, I'll say this, because your X-Men '97 episodes were so full of lore and information. I think that I was on much better behavior than I normally am. But like, this is actually not that out of the ordinary. I sometimes can't help myself.
I love it. It's perfect.
That is tremendous, man. Salute to Jake. Cecelia, so if anything for you, what is something that over the next 3 episodes or even the next episode that you're interested in the most as far as character notes, character things you want to see further fleshed out or developed, and what you want to look at as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so I think I am interested in seeing if May finds herself at any point at all compelled by what the Jedi have to offer. I think that so much of her hang up with the Jedi and so much of her has been how she sees that they, sees them as someone who took away her family, took away her sister. And I would be interested to see, because she loves structure and rules, and something of a rules connoisseur myself, as much as I would love to be,
okay, Willem Dafoe.
In my heart, I desperately I want, what I believe in is like revolution and upending the rules, and then deep down I'm like, but I kind of want to know what you think about me and how to translate that into me being a good person. But that's things that I can work out in therapy and not on this podcast.
Yep.
But I mean,
you could kill 2 birds with one stone. It ain't no biggie. It ain't no biggie to us. You're amongst friends.
No, but I think that she can. I think that I'd be really interested to see that go there. I really, really love Camille as a character. He's already so. I mean, obviously, Jason Mendoza, as a like quirky apothecary person with a weird voice for a little while there. I couldn't tell if he was like changing his voice or not. But now going like Sith Lord situation, I'm already like, I don't know. I could probably speculate, but I don't know that I want to. I'm ready for him to just like.
I mean, you do what you feel. If you feel like you don't need to, it's no biggie. It's no biggie here.
I think that they accomplished so much in these first 5 episodes. This episode felt like it could have been like a penultimate episode, and so the fact that we have 3 more, I am like reticent to actually give this is what I think is going to happen and what I'm hoping to see. I would love for both the sisters to like come together in the end and run off in the sunset. I do think that of Camille, Soul, and the sisters, at least 1, if not 2 people are going to die. But I'm not sure.
I think they merge into one being.
Oh, wow.
Said that. Was weird.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I'll roll with it. I also really want to figure out more about the parentage situation. What happened there?
We've proven create life in utero through the Force. We've proven that is canonical. So,
I know it's canonical, but I really want them to actually like show me what that means. And
you want a diagram in a textbook?
There's a website.
I kind of do. I'm like, you can't just like tell me to believe that they just like appeared Jesus style.
They told us to believe they had lightsabers and the Force. There's probably
no, but you can. I understand what she's saying now.
Go incognito and then search for how were Jedi babies made. I'm sure there's lots of websites that can help you on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
yeah, she wants force users for dummies. How were they? How were they made? Like, yo, I totally understand. I
but
wouldn't
they
mind seeing a little diagram or a little like, hey, this is how we got here.
I
Like,
mean, they
yeah, for
also
sure.
did foreshadow it. They're like, when they find out how the children were born, and if they just leave that, I'm going to be like, what the fuck? We
Yeah,
could have just left
we're
it a
gonna get more, I
mystery.
think.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
definitely going back. We're definitely going back in the past one more time, I believe, to get another look at what happened because we still also have to find out what Soul's
Mm-hmm.
thing was as far as the fire and everybody dying and all that other stuff. So
Mhm.
that'll be something to look at going forward. I've been on this the entire series, but now that this has happened, uh, what's Vernestra gonna do with the Senate? What's happening with that politics stuff? That's my bag. I'm excited to see if we get something on that going forward. And yeah, as I mentioned before, Soul is the most interesting thing. So the Acolyte has given us a wonderful turn.
Yeah. Can I
And
quickly just say something because I feel like we haven't really get enough justice. Just run it down a couple
yo, yeah,
things.
go ahead, go ahead.
The fucking lightsaber stuff in this was so cool. They're doing
Yeah,
innovations. The two things I really loved was when he impales one person already and then uses the force to
and
get
then you
another
force up
person impaled. Awesome.
shish
And
kebab
then
time.
That was
and
sick.
then the move of using a lightsaber with your finger on the button as like a gun to the head is so fucking cool. Like I appreciate that they're it's we've seen a lot of Star Wars fights and I like that they're doing new ways, not just
Very
riffing on
dark.
old because you could very easily be like, this fight's an homage to the fight in this, and no. This is like they're using these characters, and dpalm, as you explained, like the fighting decisions are so character based, and that's where you get things like him using a lightsaber as a gun to the head, because that's not something that a lot of characters we've seen in Star Wars would do, but he would.
Yes, yes. That's a great point. Deepalm, do you have anything that you wanted to add on like the episode, like in terms of the action or anything like that before we
I
go?
adored every second of it. I can't wait to watch it again in a second. I'm just fully blown away. And we know Jake, that last speech was very good and heartfelt and smart, but I know the thing that was unsaid, and that was fuck Dave Filoni. And honestly,
Mm.
I don't know why you felt the need to stop now.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I'm gonna listen back to this and be like, what the hell? I do this sometimes. It's been a while actually since I randomly took a shot at someone.
Yes.
But AC,
Yes.
it's not new. It's definitely a thing that I'll do.
It's no, it's happened, but
Because what
this
happens is I start to like say a joke making fun of someone, and then like my brain keeps going, and I'm like, I don't believe that. Why am I saying that? And so yeah, I just think that the hat's a little silly, Dave. I'm sorry. You make stuff I enjoy. Um, but it's a funny thing to make fun of. He wears a hat all the time.
this has been a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and this show I just love the direction that the show is going in, and we have the back half of the season where we'll see what happens over the next 3 weeks. Should be really exciting. Appreciate our guests for joining us this evening. First, D Palm, where can we find you? Where can we find your work and what you do? Thank you for joining us.
You can find me here whenever they decide to bring me back and I
Mhm.
ruin their airwaves.
Mhm.
But you can also find me over at the MTR Network. I'm an editor, do podcasting over there. I have the sports show Unanimous Decision Podcast, the UD Pod. This week we had on Justin Jones from the Three Fifths Pod. We talked about all a litany of things, but among them NCAA 25, how excited we are, the
Mhm.
Ice Cats winning the Stanley Cup, and the fact that Florida is a top 10 ranked hardest places to play in NCAA 25 is absurd. Georgia at 5 is nuts. Florida on the list at all is ridiculous. A&M at 1 is laughable. That's it. UDPod, DPalm66 on Instagram, Twitter, and all your favorite socials. I saw that, Jake, and that was for you. In case
Yes, yeah, I know. I've actually been to I've been to the swamp for a game once because once again I didn't go there, but it is not. It doesn't seem like it's not that hard of a place to play. When I was there, USF almost beat the Gator, so it can't be that hard to play there.
Nice, 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 and appreciate you, D-Palm, as always. And our pal Cecelia. Pleasure having you on again, as always.
Mhm.
Where can we follow you, my friend?
You can find me on various social media platforms under like Cecelia Stokes, Cecelia M. Stokes, Cecelia Alfonso-Stokes, etc. And soon I will be working on There's a professor at UW-Madison, Joshua Calhoun, who runs a public humanities project called Holding History that has a podcast that we're going to be really working on in the upcoming years. So
Hey.
I will be helping to produce that. So Holding History will hopefully be some place that you may find me. Otherwise, you'll find me trying to read a bunch of books until I need yet another new eye prescription. So
Yep.
yeah.
Well, there you go. Appreciate you for joining. Always appreciate your presence on this program.
Mhm.
And Jake, where can we follow you, sir?
Well, normally I would tell people to follow me at the Jake Christie, listen to other podcasts, Love It First Sight. But what I want to do right now is just let people know that the Mets are up 3-0 against the Yankees. Woo! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! There you go.
That grimace thing is real,
You're damn
man.
right, the grimace thing is real. Grimace.
Grimace is-
Is Mr. Met on the hot seat?
I mean, the thing is, I've long held that Mr. and Mrs. Met have an open marriage, so like I don't think he's like.
I found another corner of your psyche I did not mean to find. It was a throwaway joke
No.
about Grimace replacing Mr. Met, and here we are. You're writing fan fiction. This is
The thing about dpalm, this is just who I am. Like, and the funny thing too is that like the sentence I said sounds like a thing I just made up, but I can promise you this is not the first time I've said that.
Trust me, Jake. It came across as
but
something
no, I think that is Mr. Met on the hot seat. Like, no, just because Mets fans are not like that. Like, that's the thing. Like, we're not gonna kick him out. I mean, more
you
for
need
all
to
of
get
us.
like that. Grimace is getting you results.
You're damn
Mr.
right
Met's
he is.
watching nothing but sadness.
Yeah.
Grimace
okay.
is at least producing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that I think the Mets way of doing things would just make add Grimace to the throuple. Is what I'm thinking.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And salute to Grimace, man. Like
Yeah.
the Mets were in a bad spot, and now
One of my,
now they're playing much better.
One of my favorite jokes on the show Psych that I do the podcast about is that Sean mentions the Grimace, and Gus, Dule Hill's character, says, Grimace. Now that brother was funny. And Sean's like, you can't claim Grimace is black. Yeah. That joke.
No, but seriously,
Grimace.
Grimace is black. Just like
I mean,
Skeeter was black. Like, we're not doing
that's
this. Just...
what Gus's response is. Gus's response is that his name is Grimace T. Jackson, and so therefore he is black.
Well,
Which is
anyone who's purple coated in animation is a black.
No,
person,
of course.
including,
Yes, the rest
Panthro.
Historically accurate.
Great. Now, you know the story of Grimace actually was that Grimace was originally a brown chicken nugget, but they changed him to purple because they thought the brown was a bad color.
Yo,
he looked
That's
gross.
three. And that's three. It was Dave Filoni hatred. It was Mr. and Mrs. Met fan fiction. And now it is the lore of Grimace. I've learned too much about
I know.
this
The only thing I have to bring to this earth is dumb shit like that. But yeah, but now they say he's a taste bud. That's what they rebranded him as a taste bud.
He's a I'm not
Wait.
gonna say what he looks like.
Wait.
Yeah.
The McDonald's purple person
Yes.
is a taste bud?
That's what they say now, yeah.
This is how they get you, Cecelia.
But of course,
they're going to ask for literature, and you start sending money. This is how he gets you into the club.
I still don't know what this has to do with baseball, and I only know that
He
Oh
threw out first pitch at a Mets game, and the Mets are like 8-2 since. So
they're 10-2.
10-2, right?
I don't know.
I shouldn't know that, but I do.
Yeah,
I don't know.
10-2.
I don't know sport.
But hey, it's fine.
The Olympics are coming up, so
USA.
Simone Biles. Just Simone Biles.
Yeah, of course.
Now that was a turn. That was
Wonderful.
a turn. I love these turns. They're just tremendous. But in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at AnthonyCanton_3. Follow the show at MC University Pod on all platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like, follow all those things, and rate us 5 stars on any podcast platform that you listen to us on. And of course, as I mentioned at the top of the Patreon, Jake and I are about to have some fun with some bonus stuff. So if you want to tap into that, $3, get into the Discord, all those things. As I mentioned before, appreciate everybody for listening and supporting. So for Cecelia and dpalm and Jake, I am Anthony Canton III. This has been Marvel Cinematic University, and we will talk to you next time.